Hello, BookTube, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Welcome to Weekly Reads. The last one for the year, because obviously next week will be January 1st. But I'll talk about the books I read next week, Friday anyway. After I talk about the books I've read this week, or tried to read this week, and preview the books I'm going to be reading this week and then into the next work week, I'll do a quick end of the year wrap up. And then on Friday, my afternoon video, the one I do first before weekly reads, I'll do a sort of daydreaming 2021 video that Steve did last week, like giving some plans for his 2021. I'll do it then, and I'll talk about my reading goals, collecting goals, channel goals, writing goals, and art goals. And then, of course, weekly reads will be at its usual time. So anyway, let's get to the books. This might be a quick rush, this video might be a little rushed because I'm waiting on my brother to bring some Christmas supper. Might talk about Christmas after I talk about the books. Anyway, so this week has been pitiful reading-wise. Let's begin with The Bailing. So, for Belle Redemption, I took on The Lesser Bohemians by Eimear McBride. I read this, or bailed on this, a few months ago, and Belle Redemption rejected. It's the story of a young woman from Ireland going to London to attend film school or drama school, acting school, where she meets and in the course of her studies she meets an older actor, and they begin a passionate, torrid affair. And the writing is first person, stream of consciousness, and it's fractured. The language is fractured and fragmentary, and I find it more than a little repelling. And I basically bailed roughly in the same spot I bailed the first time. So I'm thinking me and Eimear McBride just don't connect well. Or at least it could just be this book. But anyway, so I bailed on it again. Continuing with The Bailing, Wonderland by Stacey Erasmo. This is a story of Ende, who was a famous musician years ago, and she's basically self-financing a comeback attempt. And during a European tour, she tries to recapture the magic. It is told in a first-person point of view that is rather droning and boring, and I really wasn't interested. Although I will admit there's something about the last 2 weeks of December or December in general, I'm just impatient, because last year the books I read the last 2 weeks of December were among the books I just could not stand. Anyway, another bail, and this one is mind-boggling, is Word of Mouth, edited by Timothy Liu. This is an anthology of gay American poetry that I picked up from Book People nearly 20 years ago. And it's been about 20 years, 18, 17, since I actually read it. And so I decided to reread it. I was a bit down because obviously I've had 2 bails already, and while some of the poems I remember fondly, a lot of the poetry in here just, whatever magic they had when I first read them. I mean, that could be generally as a young gay man who's experiencing gay literature for the first time after being in a somewhat restrictive environment. Not totally, but I mean, you don't really have access to gay literature, gay culture. Experiencing it for the first time is incredibly magical, excuse me, and moving. And coming back to it, you're like, or I was like, a lot of these poems aren't really that good. I mean, some of them are Edgar Bowers' Chaco Canyon, and some of the others. But having read a collection of poetry by James Broughton and Edward Field and Frank O'Hara and James Merrill and certainly Robert Duncan, I'm thinking a lot of these poems, yeah, there were better poems that could have been selected, even though maybe not necessarily about the gay experience. So I was very, very disappointed with that read attempt. And while I did manage to finish the next book, I can't say I particularly liked it all that much. And that, sadly, is The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. The movie adaptation from 1984 starring Noah Hathaway and Oliver Barrett is much, much better. But reading it, I just really didn't feel anything. I mean, there's no sense of wonder, no sense of danger. I mean, the Orin is basically such a crutch that any sort of story progression, the scenes where, I mean, you need a sense of danger, is rather quickly absolved. I mean, and then of course the second half of the book where, so quick synopsis if you haven't read the book or seen the films. So basically the Neverending Story is about a little boy named Bastian who is running from some bullies. He stumbles upon an old bookshop where he sees a book called Neverending Story. He steals it and takes it to school, where he basically skips school and hides out in the attic and reads all day and all night. And gradually he reads the story of the Neverending Story, in which a nothingness has invaded Fantastica, and the childlike empress, the goddess of this world, is deathly ill. And to find out what's wrong with her, a young hero named Atreyu is selected to go on this great quest. And as Atreyu performs his great quest, Bastian obviously follows along with him, until eventually the illness is identified, the cure is identified, and basically the childlike emperor says, well, basically, yeah, the savior has been with you the whole time. I mean, it's Bastian. And then Bastian goes into this sort of weird denial of being the savior, even though he's basically said numerous times in chapters before then he wants to save it. And then once he does save it and he's tasked with recreating Fantastica or enlarging it, he basically enters into Fantastica and basically makes a lot of wishes that cost him his memories. and gradually becomes more and more of a terror, a brat, until he grows out of it and returns to the real world a more compassionate person. I just, yeah. I mean, the movies are much better. Okay, the first movie is much better. The second movie, eh, but anyway, but I mean, so I, I just, yeah. I mean, now this is of course children's lit, and really probably works. I mean, had I read this book when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, I would have loved it. I would have absolutely loved this book. But as an adult, as somebody who reads fantasy as, I mean, their favorite genre, um, that there isn't any real sense of danger, any real sort of, not complexity, but I mean, real sort of threat. I mean, it's all sort of, there's a crutch there. It just kind of put me off. Also, the fact that there is an interpretation of this story that I'm pretty sure Ende would have rejected, or maybe not. But it is one that I've seen of the book, and I agree with it. I do think the Neverending Story is a bit of a anglerfish and a parasite. I mean, the story within the story. I mean, basically, Atreyu's quest is basically to lure Bastian into Fantastica. And thereafter, as Bastian recreates Fantastica, he does sort of, I mean, Fantastica preys on him. It consumes him until eventually he's an empty shell, unless he can manage to break out of it. But, I mean, that's a very interesting interpretation. And certainly, I mean, ignite some ideas of my own. But anyway, so just frustrating. Anyway, so today I started a new book, Memorial by Bryan Washington. It's checked it out from my library through ebooks, and I don't know quite what I make of it. It's about two gay men, Benson and Mike. Mike's father is dying, so he leaves Houston to go be with him in Osaka, while his mother is flying from Tokyo to Houston to spend some time with him. And Benson ends up saddled with Mike's mother, and during the days and months that she's there, they kind of form a relationship, a friendship. And also Benson has to deal with his own family problems. His father's, while not as bad off as Mike's, does have his own problems. So far I've finished the first Benson part. The book is basically split into Benson, Mike, and then a second Benson. So far I finished all of Benson, and I'm just, it's okay. I'm not loving it. It's just okay. I mean, there are a few issues that I'm having. There's one paragraph where Benson's older sister Lydia is described as being younger, while being then in the same paragraph being readjusted as being older. And there's some commentary from Benson's family that he was dating Mike Asian American man, and now he's living with a Asian woman, and it's like none of them are going, well, could that be Mike's mother? It's weird how that whole thing's being handled. And then some of the dialogue is, I think, a bit off-putting. Bit maybe too confrontational, but anyway, so I'll probably finish it up tomorrow. I mean, nothing's really driving me away from the book. So hopefully it will, like the Mike section and then the wrap-up will hook me or make me go, wow, or something. I don't know, but right now it's just okay. So after Memorial, I'm probably going to read either The Book of Eels by Patrick Svenson or Fathom by Rebecca Gibbs, which is about whales. And if I'm lucky, I'll be able to get both in. So, yeah. So, that finishes up the books. Quick year-end wrap-up. So, my reading goal for this year had been to read over 100 books, which I exceeded by about 150, a little bit more. Now, it's about 152, so it should be about 155 by the end of next week. I'd also wanted to do some reading projects, namely my America 20 project, where I would read 20 books by American writers new-ish to me, with their backlogs from like the 90s, 80s up to near present, and also reading around the world in 80 books. So reading around the world in 80 books I haven't really done much with that. I thought about some book ideas, some authors, but I haven't really made much progress. And as for America 20, I have collected about half of the list, but so far I've read 3 of the listed authors, and I've bailed on all of them. So maybe literary fiction is just not my thing. And I should be okay with that, but I mean, I have this weird, unsettled reading relationship with it, where I think to a certain extent I want to like it, I should like it, but I don't really get on with it, except for rare instances of books that I do like, that are literary fiction or realistic or general, or however you want to define that term. As far as book collecting, I've done pretty good. I didn't really come in with much of an idea or goals of what I wanted to pick up or how much, but overall I'm quite happy with how my book collecting's turned out. Although there's probably going to be quite a few of them that are going to get purged. Although I am quite happy that I have moved from just buying Amazon and Libris, excuse me, to also supporting local and independent bookstores. Powell's in Portland, Book People in Austin, and Fabled in Waco. Yeah. So channel, pretty happy with that. Writing, I like the progress I've made in the idea phase, the prep phase, not necessarily the actual writing phase. Anyway, and art, I really need to do more of that. So, anyway, BookTube, let me check this real quick. Oh, so I have to go, supper's arrived, so I will see you next week with a few videos, and I'll obviously the library tour and 2021 goals and weekly research. Thank you, BookTube. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.